Renudi, if it's okay. So after him, okay, then it passes to you. Please.
Sir, we were discussing about the two types of icons, the Maryada Purushottam and of course the Tandav of Lord Shiv. But I think in the Ramayana...
Sorry, just one second. How much more time do we have?
We have another, say, 7 to 8 minutes.
There's another program, right? Okay,
Yeah.
Sorry.
all right, so we were discussing about the two types of gods, the Maryada Purushottam and of course the Tandav figure in Lord Shiv. But I think in the Ramayana, there are very strong associations also between Ram and Shiv. First of all, as you mentioned, one woman man, both are one woman men, both Lord Ram and Lord Shiv. And then of course Ram wins Sita itself by lifting the Shiv Dhanush. So I think they're also associated with each other.
Lord Ram was a Shiv Bhakt as well.
Yes, so...
Just as many of us are.
So was Ravan.
And so was Ravan. And Lord Shiva respected Lord Ram as well, tremendously. We know the story of the Agastya Muni story. We know the story when he tells Parvati Ma that what is the summary of, if you don't want to take the full Vishnu Sahasranam, the 1,000 names of Vishnu, what can you say which is a summary of it? Lord Shiva says, just take the name of Ram. So both of them, of course, respected and worshipped each other. You're right.
Okay, Renudi next, and then the mic passes here, please.
I'm coming back willy-nilly to the topic of Ram and Sita because it has always troubled me, and I somehow, in spite of so many explanations and interpretations, this had a purpose. This has some explanation which we can perhaps use in our present day context, so that we don't get this disturbance does not remain in our heads.
No, it's a fair point, and I do have an interpretation of that. You'll have to wait till the fourth book of my series till that. But I just want to repeat once again, no one can justify what is done. And I'll just repeat
just on the human level.
The human level. But that's a perspective that I spoke of earlier. When you look at Gautam Buddha, when you look at Mahatma Gandhi, when you look at Lord Ram, what perspective do you look at them from? And there is an interpretation I have for that story, but sadly I can't give it away because it might kind of spoil the fourth book for you.
At the next meet, maybe.
Inshallah.
Yes.
Hi, okay.
This young lady, she made a reference to Michael Madhusudhan Dotto, who I have always read and admired, and he's one of the greatest poets Bengal has produced. And he used to write in English.
One of the greatest poets India has produced.
Because he wrote... Thank you. Initially, he used to write in English. And these are his words, not mine, and I'd like your comment on it. He said, I dislike Ram. He is a coward. And if it had not been for that traitor Bibhishan, Ravan would have kicked Ram and his whole monkey army into the sea. And this is what he said. What would you like to comment on this?
We're a free country and he has a right to his opinion. And in fact, not just post 1947, in ancient India, in the traditional Indian way, you have a right to your point of view. Like I just said earlier, there was no concept of blasphemy in ancient India. The concept didn't exist. Everyone has a right to their point of view.
No, but not saying that he was blasphemous, but he had a point, because Ram killed Ravan by unjust means. And Bibhishan gave him the secret. Ram killed Ravan when he was unarmed and at his prayers. Is that Maryada Purushottam? No, Ram killed him.
Okay.
Ram killed him.
Okay.
Bibhishan had given him the clue that Ravan's life was in his navel.
Well, Meghnad, if you look at it that way, Meghnad was killed in a similar fashion. But they were at war. I mean, I think we'll wait for the fifth book.
I think, yeah, you'll have to wait for... No, this will be done in the fourth book. The fifth book will be an extension of that.
I'm sorry. I have to do that. Okay.
Can't hear you.
We all all know that Milton had written Paradise Lost. Milton was of Devil's Party without knowing it, and our Michael Madhusudan Dutt was of Devil's Party, knowing it full well. That is my point.
In the Indian way, there's no there's no concept of devil or God either.
Okay.
Everyone has a right to their point of view.
This young
And I'll put
gentleman has
across
a
my
question.
point of view with my books.
This young gentleman has a question.
We're a free country. Yeah. Hi.
We've heard that in Ravan's early life, he was a Shiv Bhakt and he was one of the greatest Shiv Bhakt. And at the end, he does certain things that are not justifiable. So, at what point did he turn from good to bad? And if we encounter such a point, how do we stop ourselves? If we encounter means if we are going to do something bad, how do we stop? How do we react that this is not to be done?
Remember, in the Indian way, at least human beings, there's no concept of you becoming good or bad. It's about karma and its consequences, and you will suffer for the consequences of your karma or benefit for the consequences of your karma. And this doesn't just happen to normal human beings; it happens to gods as well. That is the Indian way. If you do something that is not in line with dharma, that is earning you bad karma, it will come back to you. There's no concept of him turning good or bad. The thing that we have to keep in our mind, what do we learn from him? From Ravan, essentially, it's the concept of the ego, of how the ego can destroy you. Up to a particular level, the ego is probably good for you. Like, for example, if you are someone who is from the underclass and you are fighting against a system which is elite driven, which is where it's difficult to break through, and ego is probably good because it gives you that drive to keep pushing ahead. I come from a very humble family. I'm not ashamed of it. I'm very proud of it. Our family, we've made it on our own. My grandfather was a very humble guy. He was just a pandit in Kashi. In my younger days, when I was a banker, I had an ego. I was very pushy. I was aggressive. That actually helped me in my career. Beyond a particular level, however, ego can perhaps end up being harmful as well. You have to find that concept of balance within yourself and always be aware that you will suffer the consequences or get the benefits of your own karma. That is the way to approach our stories. That's the way to approach Lord Ram, Ravan, everyone. It's the consequences of your own karma. There is no right or wrong, good way to fight, bad way to fight. The positives and negatives of your karma. That's the way it works.
I'm sorry,
This concept of someone being absolutely perfect, someone being absolutely evil, and the perfect guy has to do everything exactly perfectly, and the evil guy will have no redeeming features. It's a Western concept. It's not an Indian concept. There is no concept like this in India.
We have time for one last question, please. I see the mic there. I'm sorry, we can carry this discussion offline. I mean, we can take it sort of offline, quote unquote, to the bookstore and the author's lounge, please.
Good evening, Mr. Tripathi. I just wanted to find out what kind of research you employ. You know, when you speculate about the science that was in the Shiva Trilogy and, what you write about the drinking of the Somaras, the planning for the battles and all that. Where do you get your source material from?
I just read a lot. I read at least, at minimum, 4 or 5 books every month. And I've been reading at that pace for decades, for probably more than 30 years now. So I started reading when I was 4 or 5. So 35 years I've been reading. In my family, everyone reads a lot. We all debate a lot. We all discuss a lot. We are a typical Indian family in the traditional sense, so nothing is beyond, there's nothing that cannot be discussed. So most of my learning comes from my reading and my discussions with my family.
So are those things real? Or what I'm saying is, are they historical, scientific, or are you speculating in your writing?
Look, in my books, there are some things which are, of course, speculation. There is no proof at this point of time, for example, that we had nuclear weapons in those days. Any culture had nuclear weapons. There's no proof of that. There was some paper presented in the World Science Congress recently that we had traveled to Mars. There's no proof of that either. But the problem, though, is that our education system is such that we know so little about our own people that very often we disregard very credible scientific achievements. So, for example, in that same World Science Congress, there was a very high quality paper. I've read many of those papers. I love reading scientific papers as well, which claimed that that we discovered the Pythagoras theorem. Not we, as in, Bodhayana ji discovered the Pythagoras theorem before Pythagoras did. That is actually a fact. It's there in the Shulba Sutra, which is dated to 200 years before the Pythagoras theorem was written out. This is something which even the Europeans have accepted. Or the fact that surgery was practiced in ancient India, Shushruta Samhita, it's been discovered in the Bauer documents. It's not some ideal fantasy. That is actually a fact. It is a fact that the earliest modern nose reconstruction surgery was actually done in India around, I think, 350, 400 years ago on a soldier of the Maratha army. It was done by a barber. And that surgery was recorded by two British guys, which works for a certain class of our Indians who believe something only if there's a European stamp of approval on it. So this surgery was actually recorded in a magazine called the Gentleman Magazine. And that barber followed the exact procedure that had been written down in Shushruta Samhita 2000 years ago. And that surgery was successful. And even modern rhinoplasty actually still follows a variation of that surgical process. So we did have surgical techniques in those days. Why do fantasies, about our scientific past, why do they exist in India? Is because there's an absence of knowledge. We teach nothing about our own scientific achievements in our education system. Our medical education starts with a study of Greek medicines. We don't teach Indian medicine. Our mathematical, I'm a BSc Maths. I graduated in mathematics. We study, Arab theories of mathematics. We study Greek theories of mathematics. They don't teach us anything about Indian mathematicians, who are actually the greatest, among the greatest mathematicians. Many of the the defining concepts of mathematics came from them. So we don't teach ourselves. You're right, the Fibonacci series as well. Yes, you're right. And again, that is recorded. And for that class of Indians which appreciate something only when there's a European stamp of approval, even Pingala has been accepted by Europeans. We need to teach ourselves about our own scientific achievements. There are two groups of extremists in India. There's a left-wing group of extremists who want to believe that there was nothing scientific or great in our past, and there's a right-wing group of extremists who believe that we were the only scientifically great people, everyone else were a bunch of barbarians. We need to save ourselves from these two groups. Our education system, sadly, teaches nothing about Indian scientific achievements. That is a serious lacuna, which is why most of us, we know nothing about India's, at least the educated urban Indians know nothing about India's scientific achievements. Nothing.
On that depressing note, I think we shall have to end.
Sorry, it's a subject I feel passionately about. I'm a science lover, so.
Well, you can redeem yourself at the bookstore by saying happier things. I'm afraid we'll have to. I would have loved to have continued, but the guests are here for our next session, which is again another fascinating session on partition through the eyes of a woman. And Amish will be available for a very brief time for further queries and at the bookstore, where he will also sign copies. Thank you so much, Amish.